Okay, welcome this evening. Empathetic living. We tend to see empathetic living as, feeling for other people. It all sounds wishy and washy. But in this video, we're going to take a look at the nature of empathetic living and find out how, by living in an empathetic way, we can actually empower ourselves and have a better, more fulfilling, and more active life. First off, we have to understand what is empathy. There's a difference between empathy and sympathy. Sympathy is when you feel sorry for somebody. You feel bad about that person who fell off the bike. Poor bastard, he fell off his bike. That must be fun. Empathy instead is you actually feel on some level what it is to be like that person. You actually feel, oh my God, that poor guy fell off his bike. He broke his leg. It must be really bad trying to hobble around that leg. I know he needs some help. He's living on his own. Maybe we'll go around to his house and have a chat with him. Maybe I'll help him with a crutch. That's empathetic living. Empathetic living is feeling for the other person rather than just having sympathy. But there's more to empathetic living than this. If we look at the world that we're living in today and the problems that we see in the world that we're living in today, there tends to be a lack of pathos. A society where people are self-absorbed in apps, electronic devices, rushing around the place. And maybe for the younger members of the audience, you might be thinking in terms of life has always been busy, but believe it, it's not always been this busy. If I go back to my childhood, for example, we used to carry a tape cassette recorder in our car when we used to go on a week-long holiday to the countryside once a year. And we listened to tapes. We used to watch Top of the Pops on a Thursday evening, and we used to listen to the tape recorders, or we listened to radio. We had certain programs. If I want to watch a program on Thursday evening at 8 o'clock, I have to be there Thursday evening at 8 o'clock. Maybe later in the year it'll be reruns. With a bit of luck. If I want to call somebody, I have to physically take a phone and dial the number. So our living was a lot simpler, and technology has enabled us in many ways, but also it's disabled us equally in other ways. So for example, there's so much technology involved these days in trying to get cameras to work, audios to work, apps to work, logging onto this, logging out to that, this password, that account. So our life is chock-a-block, and it's so busy these days. Our life is so busy these days that it's like our time has been eaten. It's like it's a kind of a time cancer. There's this busyness in modern life. And maybe when AI kicks along in a few years, in a decade or two, if it doesn't go mad and kill us all, maybe AI will make life a lot easier, because at the moment our technology is in no way intuitive. Our technology doesn't, we have to labor over our technology. We have to do everything and make everything work. And we have our computers crashing and, our phones uninstalling and reinstalling things. It's all a big drag. But for the moment, our time is lacking. And I feel that if I go back to my childhood, there's a tendency of, the neighbor would knock on the door looking for sugar. It's kind of like a trope, I suppose, but they actually did this years ago. You wouldn't think twice of going to a neighbor and having a chat. You wouldn't think twice of going to a neighbor and asking to help you with something. People were neighborly. And to some degree, people had to be neighborly to get on with things, because there's kind of a lack of stuff. You need the people to help you out. In our present society, we have this super high-tech society, but people are more and more isolated and more confused and more distanced from everybody else. Now, what has this got to do with empathy? Is that the more our societies become technocratic in nature, technological in nature, people have become less empathetic and even less sympathetic. It's like you're rowing your own boat and they're rowing their own boat. So I feel we've lost something in this lack of empathy. So in this video, when I'm talking about empathy and empathetic living, I'm suggesting that we have to go back to something we used to have. Now, it could be difficult because we can't go back in time. And many of us of the older generation will think it would be nice if we could go back in time. But the reality is, how would life be without cell phones? How would life be if you tell someone you're going to meet them on Tuesday at 9:30 in the morning? You have to be there Tuesday at 9:30. If you can't be there Tuesday at 9:30, you have to phone them at 8 o'clock in the morning before they leave their house to tell them not to be there. It's a hassle. You want to go and call somebody in another country, you have to take a phone out. It's going to cost you Back in the day in Ireland, maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 pounds would be like maybe $100 in today's money. A lot of money to phone somebody abroad. So we have a lot of benefits to this technology. We have all sorts of abilities of learning things and interacting with other people, and a lot of fun in many ways. But there's lack of empathy. And the problem with this lack of empathy in the society is that it works two ways. One is a society which is lacking in empathy is kind of a harsh, cold kind of society. The second thing is, when we have empathy, we actually empower ourselves. And what I mean by that is that there's now kind of a push in two directions in the world. One pushes towards an ever-increasing technological society, and one pushes a more of a back to basics, like get back to nature. The two of them, nature versus nurture, as old as in itself, this thing of nature and nurture, which is the best way to go. And it's something we have to be very careful of, because the people, the technocrats, have a tendency of pushing the agenda of technology. And I'm not against technology. I'm using technology right now to communicate with you. But the problem is, if you reduce human beings down to how fast you can calculate something, for example, a computer is going to be faster. And the temptation to look at blending human beings with technology and putting chips in people and all this sort of stuff so that you can be as fast as a calculator is tempting. And it's very tempting to look at people and say they're inferior to modern technology because a human ain't that strong, a human ain't that fast, a human has difficulty counting or multiplying or dividing in high numbers. There's lots of limitations that we have when we do direct comparisons, capacity comparisons with technology. Okay, and so there's a tendency of this push towards a technological integration of human beings with technology. And what people don't realize is that when you go down this route of combining humans with technology, you actually limit the human being. That humans have certain unique things which technology doesn't have. A computer can be very fast, for example, but it cannot think heuristically. Heuristic basically means the ability to bounce from one thing to another thing. If I say to you spoon, for example, and I ask you the first thought in your mind, one person might say dessert, another person might take caviar, another person might say the moon, another person might take a loaf of bread. This associative ability of bouncing from one thing to another is actually quite empowering. Okay, it allows us to evolve and to think in very complex ways. The reason why we have a problem with things like long-term memory or advanced calculations is that our mind is wired for this heuristic thinking. And this heuristic thinking allows us to come out with out-of-the-box answers. It allows us to think creatively and in tangential kind of ways. So there's a lot of advantages, and it's very easy to look at technology and think, oh, wouldn't it be great to be faster? Wouldn't it be great to have a better memory? Wouldn't it be great to calculate faster? But they're only individual capacities. Humanness is very, very important. And this thing that we see in transhumanism is going in the wrong direction when you actually think of the advantage of being a human. And maybe that's something we'll go into a video another time. But for now, think in terms of we should not lose our humanity. So when I'm more empathetic, it's not just that it's a benefit to you, perhaps, that if I'm more empathetic, I can feel more for you, or there's some kind of utilitarian benefit in society if people in general are more empathetic. The other thing actually empowers me if I'm more empathetic. If I am more empathetic towards you, it means I am thinking and feeling in a broader range. It means things like I'm more likely to have gratitude. I'm more likely to feel appreciation because of a higher level of awareness. The real game here, or the secret sauce you might say, we always have this image of McDonald's, the secret sauce, which probably turns out to be some kind of mayonnaise. But anyway, the secret sauce in life is actually conscious awareness. The thing that actually makes you more human and more potent and more powerful is your conscious awareness and your ability to expand your conscious awareness. And you can expand your conscious awareness. The number one way is actually empathy. I remember years ago watched a film called Kim's Game. It was an old movie based on Rudyard Kipling tale, and there's a little scene in it where they teach the boy to improve his memory. He has to remember all the gems, okay? He has to remember this gem and that gem, and he develops a great memory. But that's the technological way of boosting a capacity, the transhuman way, boosting in one direction, looking at a particular parameter and topping it up. But if we get back to empathy and the power of empathy, if we think a little bit, let's say, in a broader way, and let's speculate. I'm not going to tell you what to think, but let's just speculate. Let's say there is a God, and God is the creator of the universe. And really there's only one being, and that's God. And each human being is like a little dot of awareness, a dot of self-awareness that has its own self-identity. And that self-identity is capable of witnessing the creation of God. Therefore, in that principle, God creates people to appreciate the beauty of God. Because, like a cow cannot appreciate this, a machine sure as hell can't appreciate it. So human beings from this point of view have this creative ability to be consciously aware of the creation of God. If we push this further, we can also see is if everything is created by God, and there's one personality truly which is God, and then a whole bunch of identities which think they're separate from God, but really they're part of God. If I can empathize with other dots, other little units of consciousness, the more I can empathize with those units of consciousness, the more I can go back to the oneness of God, and the more I can go back to tuning into this universal flow. And I would push this a little bit further and suggest that mystics and gurus and various saints over the years that have things like the access, they meet somebody, they know the person's past, their history, somebody asks a question, they know how to answer, they seem to be living in the now, they are living at a higher level. What's actually happening is empathy. The power of empathy is allowing them to choose into this universal flow. And I don't want to get religious about it, because if I say that, I turn half the audience off, because half the people say, oh, I'm into religion, or I'm not into his religion. You can either think of it as religious thought, or you can think of it in a very non-religious way, and just think, say, this idea of, the law of attraction, quantum physics, just think as a creative universe. If you want to be very non-spiritual or non-religious about it, and think of just the nature of being, the nature of consciousness itself. So whether you want to take a religious, esoteric slant on this, or whether you want to take a more pragmatic, practical slant on this, the ability to empathize allows us to have the possibility of tuning into anything, anywhere, anytime, any place, anyhow. And that is an amazing thing if you think about it. If you think about whatever is creation, we can, through empathy, tune into different aspects of creation and different aspects of the fabric of consciousness, which is all around us. Although different aspects of that consciousness have different identities. So we can tune into other people. And if you compare this to, say, transhumanism, it gives us a lot of advantage to be human. Like I said, I'll probably do another video at some stage at transhumanism. The point I'm suggesting is that when we try to be empathetic, it's not just that we make the society a better place. It's not that just we become happier. But the more empathetic we can become, the broader, the wider we can become, the more we can see that sister or brother looking back at us, and we can be one with them. Not only are we going to be happier, not only are we going to be more productive, but it allows us the ability to be capable of understanding things. If you look at all these, various documentaries and videos out there and books about how did they build the pyramids, how did they put this amazing building together, how we put this temple together, how do these people know about things? For example, you take, for example, the pyramids. Apparently they're an exact sized, there's a geometrical comparison between the size of Egypt. If you multiply it something by 400 times, you get the actual diameter of the northern hemisphere of the Earth. Something like that. How could they know this? Now, I know some people say, oh, it's the aliens. But what if it wasn't the aliens? What if they just meditated and knew this? What about the ancient rishis and their understanding? They talked about at the beginning was God was breathing out and that created the universe. And at the end of the universe, God breathes in. And from their point of view, this Hinduistic philosophy, the breathing out of God is the manifestation and the breathing in is going back to the unmanifest. From their point of view, you have a manifest and unmanifest, and singularity is there somewhere along the way between the two. The closest theory that we have to what seems to be the scientific version of the universe, how did these guys have this idea? Things like the Mayan calendar, there's all this thing about 2012, but it goes back to a 25,000 year cycle, and it turns out that the galaxy does a rotation every 25,000 years. How did the Mayans know that the galaxy does a rotation every 25,000 years? Isn't that pretty far out when you think about it? So, is it that aliens told them? Is it that gods walked the earth? Or is it that somebody in these societies just meditated and that they were so empathetic that they could expand their consciousness into the fabric of the universe and just pick up on something? I leave it to you to think about that. My point is it's worthwhile trying to be empathetic. It will help you in so many ways to be a happier, more grateful human being and a more capable human being because you start developing intuition. Empathy breeds forth intuition, and intuition is the higher power. Forget all this being able to, see people's auras and remember past lives, all bullshit. Intuition, that is, if anything, the godly power, because true intuition, a higher level to intuition, gives us the ability to tune into what has to be done without getting logic in the way or experience in the way. That comes from empathy. We know what to do, but we don't know why. How do we become empathetic? Lots of things. We can do meditation. I think just raising our awareness and trying to feel for other people. How would I feel if I was in that situation? How are they feeling now? Trying to have a heart, trying to open our heart to other people. And the more we work on that, the more empathetic we'll become. Now, I'm not saying we're going to start having mysteries, intuitions about the universe. That is possible in some cases, or so it would appear to be. If nothing else, if you work on becoming more open, more aware, more heart opened to other people, more in tune to other people, always asking, how would I feel? How do they feel? Trying to tune into people. Might be awkward at first, but it's an aptitude. People tend to think that I can't develop a new aptitude. We develop new aptitudes all the time. You can develop new aptitude. But the more we do this, the more we expand ourselves into the universe, and the more our world becomes bigger over time. Reading good books, thinking about high-level thoughts, having nice talks with people, all these things help. So empathy is really a way of life. If you are lacking in emotional intelligence and feel that you're really lacking, there's lots of courses you can do, books you can do, talk to other people, try and find some empathetic people and talk to them and try and tune in to what it is that you're lacking. You can work on it. If nothing else, empathy will make you a happier person and you'll appreciate more and you'll be more productive and more capable of having nice relationships. But if you push out the boat with empathy and get more and more into it, you'll find that empathetic living will give you a bigger and bigger and bigger version of the world because you're expanding yourself into itself, into the universe. And this is the real power of human beings, is that our consciousness, not only are we aware of creation, but we can expand our awareness and understand the splendor of God, the splendor of creation, the splendor of consciousness. That is a real possibility with empathy. Either way, I really feel empathetic living is reduced down to this life skill. And we're back to the small verticals on the graph, back down to a capacity. Empathy is beyond capacity. So that's my suggestion to you tonight, is think about empathy and work on becoming a more empathetic version of yourself. Not only for your own personal benefits, not only for the benefits of society, but the possibility that's there of raising yourself to a higher level, to a deeper level, to a bigger level, and expanding ourselves, and understanding, comprehending, interacting with that which is beyond ourselves as a kind of universal expression of the creative principle in the universe. It's something to think about and maybe apply in your own life. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time.